Hello, everyone. Welcome to Practical Creativity, where we unpack and demystify the lives of creative people so that we can learn from them and do better work and better life. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. My name is Marta. I'm here with Andrea Beyer, who is a really talented person in many ways, a big-hearted person, very thoughtful as well, educator, classical bassist, and now involved in so many creative projects. So Andrea, tell us just a little bit more about you and what you're up to right now.
Well, thanks for having me today, Marta. I'm really excited to get to talk to you and been enjoying all the things you've been doing for the last month.
Thanks.
Um, so right now, I have just finished my fellowship at New World Symphony, and which the performance part of ended rather unexpectedly 2 months ago, as did everyone else's performances. So now I've recently started kind of a blog project on the website auditioncafe.com and other kind of small part-time gigs that I do either have been doing for a long time or are newer. Like I work for a small nonprofit called MuseAid that runs summer programs that unfortunately were canceled for this coming summer. But I will be teaching at two virtual summer camps this year. One of them, that's brand new, and the other one that's a double bass camp that I've been teaching at for a couple of years and is going online.
Cool. Great. So tell us more about the education side of things. You have been teaching for a long time. I know you're very passionate, especially about teaching in places in the world where maybe they have a little bit less access to classical music. Tell us a little bit more about what inspires you about teaching and making sure that the stories of music and musicians start to be accessible to people who might not otherwise find them.
Well, I think teaching for everyone is about the students and about the people that you get to meet along the way. And teaching music, I found can work really well to connect you with people because you can do it even if you can't speak the same language as the person that you're working with very well. And I love to travel. Got kind of bit by the travel bug pretty badly around the time I was finishing college, and also selfishly found that teaching abroad was just a good way to to get around the world. And so I've done I've spent several months total of maybe a year and a half living abroad and teaching in different places. And then also with the nonprofit that I mentioned earlier, we organize teaching artists training trips in parts of the world where they have trouble accessing resources and finding teachers. And that's really fun because not only do you get to go on these trips and work with the students, but you get to bring other people along when it might be their first time doing anything like that. So we've sometimes brought teaching artists from the US who have never left the country before, and for their first trip to be to somewhere like El Salvador or the Philippines to really get to know people there and get to play music with them, it's just super fun.
That's so awesome. And it really, you're right. I mean, music is one of those universal languages. You don't necessarily need to always be speaking in language. You have music and your instrument through which to demonstrate. So what is it like if you don't speak always this a lot of language, you don't share a language with the people that you're teaching? What does that actually look like for those of us who may not have been in that situation?
It's probably pretty comical if you could just watch it. Um, there's there's a lot of miming, a lot of, and it of course it depends how much of the other language you might know or that your student knows. So I've become pretty functional in Spanish but still can get by a lot, or did in the beginning. Or I also taught in an Arabic speaking place, and there can be a lot of just right now you're doing this, and then you'll demonstrate something, and then you can say, but I want it like this, and demonstrate something else. And often that gets the point across much faster than if you actually explained it. But there are definitely some mishaps also. Um, I think my favorite was I one time asked a student if she knew how to tune her bass, because I realized that another student had no idea, and she just nodded really eagerly and then played a B flat major scale, and was very earnest about it and very focused, and it was all I could do to not laugh and to really
Yeah.
pay attention and then coach her on that and then find a way back to my question.
Right. Wow. So much can go wrong, but also we want to please the people that we're with. So even if we don't 100% understand, we're eager to show that we're enthusiastic. So I totally get that. Tell me a little bit more about the bass. So the bass, I'm sure you get asked this question all the time, but the bass is really big and really, I don't want to say awkward, but it's a lot to carry, right?
It
So,
is like,
so what drew you to the bass, to those low, low notes, and what has it been like to not just like maneuver with the bass? Because I think we can figure out, something about that. But what has that meant for you in your professional life, being a bass player? How has it shaped your identity? How has it helped you express yourself? How does it, come across when you're meeting other musicians or people who are not musicians?
well, you're right that everyone wants to know why I picked that instrument when I'm 5 feet tall and um, always the smallest member of my section and the only woman. Um, but really, I started playing when I was in elementary school. And at my school, we got to try out a bunch of different instruments. And I always figured that I wanted to play violin because that's what my older sister played. And when you're 9 years old, that's how you make your decisions. And and when we got to try that out, I just didn't think it was that fun. And so I thought, like, well, maybe I'm not instantly in love with this, so I'll play the cello instead. I don't know why I was set on a string instrument, but the same thing happened. I tried a cello and didn't love it, and
Hmm.
tried the bass, which I never ever thought that I would play, and just was very excited and went home and told my mom that I had picked out my instrument, and she was not thrilled to hear that, and um, sent me back to the instrumental music teacher to try it again to make sure. And but I don't know. I was determined in fourth grade and never had any idea that I would ever study it, or much less want to put it on an airplane. um, and I think you're right. It is a very awkward instrument, and it comes with it a lot of just logistical challenges. And I think that because of that, I I wouldn't have pursued it if I didn't really want to. And I think that might be how it's really affected me the most. Is just that I, it's not convenient, and it's not easy, and it's not necessarily great for your body either. It comes with a lot of other things you have to figure out. So,
It's really
yeah.
amazing though. It just shows how dedicated you are, that you would do something that is definitely not convenient and awkward and costly and that is a challenge even physically to kind of work around. So, wow, that's
Well,
amazing.
it's either dedicated or it's just kind of stubborn and crazy.
I think we all have things like that, but classical musicians are definitely super, super dedicated. So I admire you for that. So we're here to talk about creativity as well. When I was learning classical music, I felt like I was very much discouraged from doing things other than following my teacher and following the path. And to me, I remember very clearly almost everybody I encountered said there are two pathways. One is success, which is you're in an orchestra, and the other path is failure and you're not in an orchestra. And so, that's just what I heard at the time. And I'm not very good at conforming, so I found my own path anyway, where I got to do this and, which was really cool. But I didn't realize that all of the, and I'm an oboist, so there are a lot of things that are inconvenient about that as well. Always spending time making reeds, but if you love it, you really do kind of get used to it and don't really think about all of the things anymore. But there's so many creative aspects of being a musician and of being an educator and of doing what you're doing now with the writing and the camps. But really, you've started a lot of things, and even some of the concerts that we've talked about, and that the recital you did in November, I think it was in November at New World, which just had a totally different spin on, bringing music to people who might not otherwise hear that kind of music. There's so many aspects that are creative to what you are up to, that you are freely pursuing. And it sounds like there's not one path to success. Can you talk a little bit about your own creativity and how you've discovered all of those pathways that feel right for you?
Well, this is a really interesting question because I feel like it's something that I'm really grappling with right now and trying to figure out my next path or multiple. It's because I'm just finishing at New World now, and the environment of of the New World Symphony is very orchestral audition driven, and a lot of people are extremely focused on their auditions, and but it can sometimes feel a little bit like you're in a like you could have easily have tunnel vision towards taking auditions, but at the same time, New World has also given me the support and the the options to do all these other creative projects, and so I feel really fortunate for that. Like the concerts that you're talking about, and which is really how I got to know you. Was working on the first one that I put together. Um, so I think it is always a challenge, but if you are preparing up for auditions doesn't necessarily feel like creative work, even though you are creating music. It's kind of in a box and it's very structured and instructed, like you're saying. Um, so I think the other projects have really felt like more of the creative outlet for me.
Mm.
And I think a lot of them have just started as what if ideas, and and I mean they've all been very different. Also, like the blog that I'm working on now and the concerts that I produced at New World, but I think they've all been driven by the desire to connect with people in different ways and different kinds of people. But I think that's always been the underlying motive and the goal.
Connecting with people. That is truly amazing, because doing that in the concert hall is one way, but also kind of using that as a way to reach people who might not otherwise find themselves in the concert hall is also pretty powerful. Tell us a little bit about those kinds of projects, those kinds of concerts that you've put together at New World and elsewhere. that were intended to really emphasize that connection and welcome people in?
Well, the two big concerts that I've done, which were both at New World, were extremely different. But the first one, which was called Face Off, was based on the idea of American Idol and with the goal of really bringing in new audience members. And I also with the goal of showing people that don't think to go see an orchestra on the weekend, that really can be just a fun activity. And so I found that a lot of people outside of the music world wouldn't even consider that when they're just thinking of what to do with their weekend. And so we wanted to combine the orchestra with something that people do think of as just normal entertainment, and just make a fun concert. So people, if in the concert we presented 6 different instruments from the orchestra and had them kind of compete with each other, and including a good degree of smack talk and uh, you know, color coordinated T-shirts, um, and then the audience got to vote the way that you would on American Idol or a show like that, and choose their favorite. And it was really fun. I was thrilled with how it turned out. The orchestra had a lot of fun on stage, which is always a good place to start, I think. And um, yeah, I was excited to see it happen again the following year.
Amazing. And it is not usual for people to be able to vote on their favorite instrument. So that was really, really fun. I found it fun. I went to both of the concerts and it was really entertaining. And you're right, the smack talk and the like violins versus percussion, like all of that stuff was very fun. It
Well, and
allowed people to get in it, you know?
oh yeah, I feel like I have to mention that it would never have happened the way it did without you.
Oh, well,
So I
thank
have a lot.
you. Oh,
um,
so nice. And tell us about the one that you did in November. That was very different and a totally different format. So, and this has to do with some of the things that you were talking about earlier, which is the whole thing about teaching being about connecting with human beings, regardless of, you know, whether you understand each other's world. So tell us just a little bit more about that one.
so that other concert was a smaller chamber music concert called Music from Beyond the Wall, and it was part of New World's Inside the Music series, which is a smaller, um, uh, just a they call it like adult educational, but I think that makes it sound a little bit more serious than it is. Um, so this concert was driven by my traveling experiences, and I planned and put it on with a flute player at New World, and it was really inspired by the reactions that I've gotten from people when I've told them where I'm traveling. So I've gone several times to El Salvador, and I spent 6 months living and teaching in the West Bank. And so many times I've told people where I'm going or where I'm coming from, and they just looked shocked and worried, and asked things like, "Are you sure that? Are you sure you're going there? And aren't you worried? And what are the people like?" And um, the reality is that the people are wonderful and warm wherever you go, and that if you are smart about how you travel, you really can go anywhere. And I want people to realize that, and to not be afraid of these parts of the world. Or I don't want people to only know what they see in the news, and to rather than just seeing the politics and the headlines, to know about the people and the culture and the art and the food. And so this concert was, we chose 4 different current composers in parts of the world that it seems like the average American doesn't know a whole lot about or has only heard about in the news. And we shared videos by the composers talking about their pieces, and had one composer actually fly in for the concert and then perform their pieces, and hope to give everyone else something else to think about next time they hear that country's name.
So it kind of gives people a real taste from like not only living human beings who are writing music now from those places, but it also helps to kind of educate people or re-educate them based on what their impressions and their thoughts are, because they don't actually have personal experience with knowing anybody or having traveled to those places. So in some ways, it helps to dispel stereotypes and also just give people a sense of connection with something that they might otherwise just kind of abstractly hear about. So this kind of makes it real and gives them a personal experience without traveling through your eyes and the eyes of the composer. Were there, well, I'm going to post that. I actually have the link up in my browser. I'm going to post it in the show notes afterwards so the folks on YouTube can also actually watch the concert itself, which is one of the great things about New World. They document everything, which is awesome. I'll see if I can dig up some of those face-off videos as well, because those are just so fun. Tell us, and what a creative tribute to all of the places that you care about, and to find composers, and I know you knew some of them personally. So what a beautiful celebration of your creativity to bring your interest in travel, education, and connection together with doing a concert that you're probably going to do anyway. That's just so creative and so awesome. So I want to thank you for that. So tell us also, you've been mentioning this blog, and writing isn't necessarily something that one would expect a bassist to do. So tell us a little bit more about what that's all about, and more about Audition Cafe.
So the blog is called the Stay-at-home Brew on the website Audition Cafe, which is a musician job board, mostly for posting orchestral auditions. And so it's very coffee oriented. There's a lot of coffee puns that go into the website. And the site was actually started by my now husband several years ago. And so it's, I guess, a little bit of a family business that I think he's glad that I'm now more involved in than I was before. Um, but after the lockdown started, I think, like a lot of musicians, I was feeling pretty lost, and and being a generally very busy and very driven person, I just felt like I needed a project. And fortunately, because I'm married and living with someone who has this website, I had a platform for it. So it's also was driven by the desire to connect with other musicians that are also maybe feeling a little bit lost right now, and either looking for inspiration or just looking for something else to read about, because there's a lot of information coming at us right now that I think we also need a break from. And the the very first post of it, which Marta, of course, you were featured in, um, I had the idea to start that one because I saw another friend of mine online was doing a t-shirt fundraiser to raise money for musicians that were out of work because of all of the COVID shutdowns. And when I saw that she was hosting this fundraiser with a t-shirt of has a picture of Beethoven wearing a mask, and I was thinking, it would be great to promote this fundraiser. Could we do it on Audition Cafe? And then was also wanting a bigger project and a way to share cool things that other people are doing. And that the first post was kind of born from that, and also was at the end of March, so it was a good excuse to celebrate Women's Month and share things, cool projects by cool women, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the blog, I think.
I think it's a fantastic resource, and thank you so much for bringing all of that light and all of that color to it. I think it's a really, really interesting platform, and I love how celebratory it is of like the wider community, the wider creative community. I've seen some guest blogs, so you know it really is an active platform. And when I went in and really checked out more about it, I mean the newsletter, the blog is something that comes to you and has a lot to offer. So I think it's a really rich resource. And when you look at Audition Cafe itself, it is something that is really widely used. People are really using the site. So to also look toward it as a resource on the content side, not just the jobs and like where can I audition kind of thing, but also, you know, I think there's real value in what you're creating that goes beyond just gigs. So I think it's like a really beautiful resource. There are tons and tons of followers, and people have been reaching out. You know, so the following that you're creating and the demand for what you are creating is growing. I can tell because there's so much involvement and activity and engagement in what you're creating. So, and you know, all of the stories and all the creativity you put behind that are not lost on anybody. I mean, it's really, you're doing a great job with it, and I'm so proud of you, first of all, but second of all, I think it's really beautiful to see a community being created, especially at a time like this, which can be so confusing and so sad in some ways. I mean, live events are not a thing right now. When we start to reopen, will we even be able to be in rooms larger than 10 people? Who knows? So do you have thoughts about how the creative community can stay uplifted, stay connected beyond resources like what you're creating? And how are you staying inspired during all of this?
It's good questions again. Well, I think you're right. The one thing that everyone seems sure about right now is that no one knows what's going to happen. And I think, I mean, one of the, or maybe the thing I've been enjoying most about writing this blog is that it's been really inspiring to me to see what other people are doing and to get to share that. And because I am still feeling pretty stuck and pretty unsure, because I'm hoping to be going into this next year putting together a freelancing career, and I think that's going to look a lot different than what I was expecting. So I think it's amazing to see what people are doing with the internet in terms of connecting with other people, and I'm seeing people getting to understand different forms of technology than they ever dreamed they would, and I think that that's really inspiring, and that's empowering people too to figure out these things. And that's musicians creating different videos and using recording equipment that they haven't, and also people like my parents are both teachers, and um, you know, figuring out how to use the technology in different ways to just keep their students moving. And I found all of that really inspiring, and I think that people will continue diving deeper into the technology to find ways to connect with the people that they can't see in person right now.
It's beautiful. And you're right. People are doing new technology all over the place. That's partly what this is. I didn't know how to live stream, and now I'm doing it on 3 platforms twice a week now. So that's beautiful. But I just keep coming back in this conversation to what I'm hearing from you, which is the idea is to connect. The idea is to be generous and to share, and to use the tools that we have, whatever platforms we have, to connect people, because that's what really matters. And I think that's how we're going to get through all of this. We're, like you said, no one has the answers. Everyone is uncertain right now. But I think when we really do connect, that's how we're going to find our ways. So I know that you are looking to move to a creative community yourself. So what is it that a person like you who is super creative and, you know, super inspired, what are you looking for when you look for a new place to call home?
Um, I mean, I guess in terms of the community, it is about the people and looking for a place that already has a lot of creative things going on that you can imagine fitting into. So I'm getting ready to move to Austin, Texas at the end of this month, and and my husband and I chose that city because he's a software engineer and I'm a musician, and it seemed like a good place for both of those things, and also seems like a really just a vibrant artsy city with really diverse communities. And um, I mean, just going through the town, you see lots of murals and lots of colorful food trucks, and I think being in that sort of environment is just inspiring on its own.
Love that. I think that that's one of the reasons I chose Miami. I never thought in a million years I'd be here, but it's really the people and that ability to be creative. There's nothing here saying, no, you can't do it that way. And I really, there's just something about me and my spirit that loves that. So I hear you, you know, being surrounded by people who are creating, and to be able to visibly see that is very exciting. So I totally get that. What is one thing about your creative practice that you feel like people don't know about, but that you really enjoy or you think they'd find interesting?
I've, I guess I've never really thought about myself having a creative practice. Like I don't think I have any consistent things that I do to try to get moving, or um, maybe I guess I said this earlier, but a lot of things have just started as kind of what if thoughts in the back of my mind, or like ideas for concerts or things to share. Just like, oh, this would be cool if this could happen. And I think I usually kind of push it aside at first and think like, no, I don't have time for that, or I don't have resources for that, or um, but it usually persists and comes back often at times that are inconvenient, like in the middle of the night, or you know, during when I'm trying to practice scales or something else. Um, but yeah, I think there are certain ideas that will just kind of keep poking their heads through to the point that it feels like I better find a way to make it happen.
That's so wise, and I resonate so much with what you're saying, because I feel like we don't realize that as we go through life, we go through our work, we're like permanently in an R&D lab for our own lives and our own work. So those ideas that keep popping their heads up, I feel like that's part of the process of your own becoming, of your own career and your own ideas. They just keep finding ways to evolve. And platforms like this, I get to interact with people like you, and a lot of the ideas about connection and sharing have been on my mind. I mean, that's why I kind of started this whole thing. So it's just really beautiful to have a conversation with somebody who cares so passionately about that, and about these ideas that just keep coming up. And it's been really beautiful to see how you have put those into action, and you know, surrounded yourself with people who shared your vision. You're a very collaborative person, and I've learned a lot from watching you work. And it's just really enriched my life. I want you to know that, and my practice as well. So it's really beautiful to see where you've come, and I know amazing things are ahead for you in Austin and beyond. Any other thoughts about what what you think creativity means, or something that you've learned about creativity that you want to share?
I think creativity can mean so many different things. I think a lot of it has to do with connecting with things that you care about and finding a way to kind of put them out in the world for to try to get other people to care about them. So maybe it is a little bit selfish. Um, I but yeah, I think you do have to figure it out for yourself. You have to really believe in something yourself before you can prepare it to share with other people. Um, and I think it is a lot about just imagining everything that might be possible and then kind of narrowing it down. And I I might get that from meetings I had with you actually, putting together or planning for the Face Off concert. I remember leaving these planning meetings that we would have just feeling overwhelmed and very excited at the same time because we would we would be in discussion with Corbin and Angelo, the two other New World Fellows, and other staff members, and um, you and other people would just be throwing out these ideas of, have you thought about this, and what if you did this, and what about before the concert and after, and how else are you going to reach these people, and what about this demographic, and just I remember just thinking like, oh my god, that would be so cool, but also how do we do that? And but I think that was really important to realize all of the things that we might want to happen, and then kind of narrow it down from there to stick to our vision and to stick to what was actually feasible.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, it's a messy process. It's like trying to do a recital together in a team format. That's very intense and very involved. Well, it's so great to hear about your reflections, and that's kind of like, it's been a tremendous honor for me to be part of like making the sausage with you guys, or helping you ask about the ingredient list or whatever, to take the metaphor way too far. But I'm tremendously inspired by what you're up to and what you've created already, and again, where this R&D is taking you eventually. So I'm so glad that we're friends, and I'm so glad that we continue to be in touch, and I wish you much luck. I think we're going to wrap it up here, but Andrea, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, sharing just your interest in connecting, and also sharing of yourself and your own observations and takeaways from what you've learned as a creative professional. Really, really appreciate it. And I'll be listing links in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. Of course, for everyone who wants to be part of conversations like this in the future, please subscribe and let us know what you think. I'll share all the comments with Andrea, and otherwise, we thank you for joining us, and everybody stay creative. We'll see you next time.